Okay. So first type of question is multiplication. We are multiplying 1 and 2 terms. Okay, well. Oops, okay. I can change the color. What is going on? It's weird. Okay, so we have 2 terms in the first pair of parentheses, first and second. So just remember that minus or plus separate the terms. In the second pair of parentheses, we got 1, 2, 3 terms. 1 first, second, and third. So to the basic rule is we gotta make sure this multiplication is performed between 1 from the first pair of parentheses and 1 from the second pair, because there are 2 here and 3 there. So usually we want you to follow a certain order when you perform a multiplication. You don't want to just do it randomly, because when you do it randomly, say oh, this one times this, and then this times this, and this times that, you will get lost. You will lost tracking which one you did, which one you didn't. So usually what we do is we forget about -2, just forget about it, and we distribute negative. We multiply 3x, the first term, with the 3 terms in the second pair of parentheses. Okay, so we're going to do 3 multiplications. 3x times 4x squared. I'm going to write the answer maybe up here. So we get 12x to the third. So that is something we learned before. 3 times 4 is 12. X times x squared is x third. We use the multiplication rule. And then we do 3x times -5x. That's -15x squared. 3 times 5, -5, -15. X times x is x squared. And we do 3x times +1. That's 3x, because 3 times 1 is 3. X, just keep it. After we're done distributing 3x, as we can see, 3x has already multiplied with every term in the second pair of parentheses. So we're going to multiply -2. So let's get rid of, whoops, it didn't work. Okay, so we're gonna put -2 back, and we're going to distribute -2 to all 3 of them. Okay, oops, so forget about 3x, because we're done with 3x. So let's do -2 times 4x. That would be -8x squared. -2 times -5x, that's +10x. And -2 times 1, that's -2. Okay, somebody's mic is on. Okay, all right. So now we are going to combine like terms. 12x third is the only one. These 2 are x squared terms. We combine them. -15 minus 8, -23. And we combine these 2, that's 10x, 13x, 3 plus 10, and -2. So that would be the final answer. I think everybody who turned in got the first one right. The second one, it's division. Well, be careful, the top cannot be combined because they're not like terms. They don't match. The variables don't match. They have x and y, but their exponents don't match. So we cannot really add them first and try to divide later. So what we can do is similar to the distributive principle. We take the top. We distribute the first term to the bottom. We distribute the second term to the bottom. But this time we do division. So I'm going to write down this step if anybody still have trouble with this question. All right, so we're doing -24x squared y third divided by the bottom. the entire bottom, and plus 18x4 y third divided by the entire bottom, negative 3x squared y third. All right, so that is something we talked about, how to divide, and that is something we know how to divide. So we have two division questions. So we divide, when we do division, it's like reversing multiplication of fractions. So you're going to separate them into three questions. Negative 24 divided by negative 3, 8. X squared divided by x squared, they cancel. Y third divided by y third, they cancel. All right, now next we do plus 18 divided by negative 3, that's negative 6. And x fourth divided by x squared, that's also x squared. We subtract the exponents, 4 minus 2. And y third divided by y third, they are canceled. And you can leave the answer this way, but usually we like the simplified writing. We don't want to put a plus and minus two signs together, so we're just going to get rid of the plus sign. So the answer will be 8 minus 6 x squared. Okay, any question about these two problems? Okay. All right. Let me make the assignment, well, for this week available, week 9. Okay. So if you can access Blackboard, you should be able to see week 9 and find the homework for this week. As you can see, if you let me actually I can switch and show you a little quick the problems we're going to learn this week. So as we move on, the topics are getting harder and harder. So that's why I'm slowing down the process and giving you more time in class to practice. Wait, let me see, which one do I share? Oh, I don't see it. Okay. All right, so we are not going to have a lot of problems this week. So as you can see, just section 5.5 and section 5.6, these 8 question plus 2 here, 10 questions. So today I'm actually only planning to cover 5.5, these 2 problems. So it's I wouldn't say these are difficult. It's just it has a lot of operations involved. It's like a big problem. It just takes time to do it. Well, whenever we have a big problem like that, we break it down into steps. So as long as you remember what we do in the first step, second step, and third step, and it's not going to be too difficult. All right. So the first type of question, these are the two left, the problem left from 5.5 last week. Again, I crossed them out. You didn't have to turn it in today. Okay, so we're gonna go back, switch back to the PowerPoint. So why are these problems so complicated? Because we got to use long division. And as you recall from the example I gave last Thursday, long division, even with numbers, it takes quite a bit of time. Okay. Right here. So take a look at the types of questions we did last week under 5.5. 5.2. What was that? 5.4, and we talked about 5.4. In 5.4, we talked about how to divide one term by one term, like these questions, and also, okay, well, and also like these questions. like this. The top, it has a lot of multiplications. Okay, something is wrong with my computer. I don't know. Okay, well, so the top, as you can see, we have -20 times x to the 6 times y4 times z. Although we have 1, 2, 3, 4, like looks like 4 different things, but that's all considered as just one term because the only operation we have is multiplication. And one term divided by one term, we were able to divide it into 4 division questions. Okay, it's like reversing multiplication of fractions. Let me go ahead and write it for you. Okay. Well, my PowerPoint just froze. Okay. I don't know if I can restart it. Oops, okay, it won't work, so I have to just start over. Okay, sorry. Well, actually, I have to restart my computer now. It's just won't work. My PowerPoint. Trying to think, what's any other way? Well, okay. I'll just give me like 2 minutes to restart my computer. All right. Well, actually, I'm waiting on the other computer to start, to restart. I'm using the second computer to talk to you. Okay. Well, so as I just showed you, so when we do division, the top could have just one term, the bottom could have one term, but the top could have 2 terms, like the second bonus question. But what if the bottom has 2 terms? That's the type we left from last Tuesday. For this type of questions, there are different ways we are going to do. In 1200, you are going to learn a different way. But right here, we're going to learn what we call long division. So I'm going to go over the long division of numbers. Again, I gave you an example last time, so I'm going to give you I guess we can go over that example one more time. All right, okay. So as you can see, this was multiplication we did. One term times one term times two terms or three terms, you just distribute as many as we have. And when we have two terms, we just have to do it a couple of times, a few times. With division, it's sort of similar when we have one term in the denominator, like this one. So if we only have one term in the denominator, you distribute each term in the numerator to the bottom. So you will separate it as two division questions instead of multiplication questions. But the third type, okay, so the third type we had was, what if we have two terms in the denominator? We won't be able to just say, okay, let's split it as top divided by bottom, top divided by bottom as two division questions. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. This doesn't work. I explained the reason because when we add fractions, we cannot add straight across. So 6a over 2a plus 4b over -1, it's not going to give you top plus top, 6a plus 4b, or bottom plus bottom, 2a minus 1. It's not going to give us that. They're not going to be equal to each other. So similarly, you cannot go back. If you have 6a plus 4b over 2a minus 1, you cannot split it as 6a over 2a, 4b over -1. It doesn't work. Okay, so we're going to do long division. The example, let's see if I still have that example, long division. Well, let's try to do another one here. If I ask you to do 400, let's do 87 divided by 23. And we can set up a long division, put the first number. The first number we call it dividend. And the second number we call it divisor. When we write it as a fraction, it looks like this. If we use the fraction as division, the 23 divisor is like denominator, 47 is like numerator. So we put the top, or the first number, dividend, under the number, the line, and the divisor in front of the number. Okay, so when we do long division, remember we have three operations that we got to do. So step one, full screen. Okay, so step one, what we did, just recall this whole process we did. We try to figure out how many times 23 will go into 48. And because 23 and 48, they're kind of big, the numbers. We want to simplify. It's like 20, round 23 to 20, round 48 to like 40. So you can check how many times 20 goes into 40. When you check how many times a number goes to another number, goes into another number, it's like division. So you're just doing 40 divided by 20. Well, when you divide 40 by 20, we know that 0, the 10, pretty much you can ignore it, cancel them out. So it's like doing 4 divided by 2. So that's why when you try to figure out how many times 23 goes in there, you could just check how many times 2 goes into 4 without, you can ignore the second digits. How many times 2 goes into 4? Well, it's very easy to see. It's 2 times, right? But even if you cannot even see that, you just take 4 divided by 2. See this line right here, what does it mean? It just means division, divide. So it's like how many 4 divided by 2 equals what? We know it's 4 divided by 2 equals 2. Okay, so the first step, we will divide to find the quotient. To find the quotient. When I say quotient, it means how many times the divisor goes into the number quotient. Okay. All right, so we figured out, so we take 4 divided by 2, that gives us 2. So I'm going to put that 2 right on top of the line. Now, after figure out how many times, so 2 goes into 4 2 times, which is going to be the same for 23. How many times 23 goes into 48? It's going to be 2 times. With numbers, sometimes we have to revise the number. You might have to increase the 2 to 3 or reduce 2 to 1, depending on what you're going to get after subtraction. Okay, so we're going to have to see, all right, 23 goes into 48 2 times. Now, how much we're left? So imagine that you have $48. If you have $48, think of the numbers as money. And you got 23 people. You divide into 23 people. Well, everybody's going to get $2. And how much is left? You got to figure out how much is left, right? So you're going to figure out 23 times $2 each person equals, so when you're going to do 2 times 23 to see how much it's going to cost us. So 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. So that tells us it's going to cost us, if we give everybody $2, that's going to cost us $46. And we do subtraction, see how much is left. We got $2 left. Okay. All right. So in this case, actually 48 means 48 tenths, not really $48. So it's so you're going to get 2 tenths left. Okay. So the second step we just did was multiplication. What did we multiply? Which two numbers did we multiply? It's the divisor and how many times we just figured out from step 1. So whatever you get from step 1, you're going to take that, multiply the number on the front, 23. So we got 46. So the second step, we're doing multiplication. So multiply what? The quotient we got from step 1. Multiply the quotient from step 1. From step 1 and the divisor, the number on the front, divisor. That's going to tell us how much money it's going to cost us. So you got it cost us 46, and then we have a left step 3, which we just did, subtract. So we're going to see the leftover, which is called remainder, right? So we subtract these two, we got 2, but these 2 means 2 tenths. We still have a $7. So we bring down the $7 together. We have 2 tenths plus $7 together. We have $27, and again, you got to repeat. So I have $27. See how much you can give to each person. So you can do 2 divided by 2. Take the first digits. So we will repeat these 3 steps again. Divide 2 by 2. That's exactly 1. So you can give everybody $1. And if you give everybody $1, you also do division. Step 1, you do 2 divided by 2. That's the quotient. Step 2, we do multiplication. We take that $1 times the divisor, which is 23. So if you give everybody $1, that's going to cost you $23 after you multiply 1 to 23. And we see what's the leftover. So we have $4 left. So the final step, we subtract 23 from 27. That gives us $4 left. So this tells us if you have $487 to divide among 23 people equally, everybody's going to get $21. $21 plus there's leftover $4. That $4 divided into 23. If you want to do it, you can get some decimal, how many dimes, how many cents. But if we just leave it, okay? Because if it's apples, if you have books, say you have 487 books divided among 23 people, everybody gets 21 books, and that 4 books left over, you cannot really split it to give to those 23 people. So these 4 books, you just have to stay there. So that's the remainder. Okay, so the idea of long division, as you can see, what we just did was 48. We're thinking of 48 as like 48 tenths, because 8 means 8 tenths, right? So if you have $486, say you have 48 $10 bills, 48 $10 bills, and you can give everybody how many $10 bills from what we just did? 2. So you can give these 23 people, everybody, 2 $10 bills. After that, you with 2 tenths left, and together with the $7, you can still give everybody $1, and then so this 2 tenths you can probably to exchange for $21, so you get $27 and you can give everybody $1, and then it's going to give you $4 left. Okay, so the whole process we're doing 3 steps, but you have to repeat these 3 steps over and over and over until you run out digits. So to give you a simple example, I just chose 487, but if you have a big number, say maybe you have 4,879, or may have 48,793, something like that, then you have to keep repeating this process. When you have more digits, you just have to bring it down, do it again, bring it down, do it again, bring it down, do it again. So that's why I'm saying this question is sort of complicated. It's because you got to do it many, many times until you run out of digits. For this question, I only had to do these 3 steps 2 times, because one time for 48, one time for 27, and I don't have any more digits. If you have more, you got to do more. Okay. All right. Any question about this one, about this example? Long division. I know, it's been a while since you did long division. Before the first exam, we did do this for decimal numbers. Okay, let's see. So the process, if you forgot how to do long division, just kind of review. Okay, now let's look at the variables. If we change 487 to a polynomial, like 2x squared plus 7x minus 3, something like that, and we can change 23 to another like x plus 7, something like that. How do we carry out this long division process? So remember, these 3 steps are going to be exactly the same. You still have to follow these 3 steps. So try to take a second to remember these steps. So what's the first step? Divide to get the quotient. What do we divide? First digit divided by first digit. Okay. I know that with numbers, you may not need to really do division. You say, well, I can see 2 goes into 4 2 times without doing division. That's great. But with the variables, I know some of the students might be able to see it without doing division. But if you can't see it, division will always work, just like 4 divided by 2. So in step 2, you will take wherever the quotient you get and multiply with the divisor. So you multiply with that, and the answer you will line up with whatever you have, 2 digits, and finally you do subtraction. Okay, so these 3 steps. And after that, check if you have any more terms instead of digits. If you have more, bring them down, and keep repeating these 3 steps. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you an example here. So I'm going to start with 2 digits. Let me see. I'm going to try to maybe do something similar to the first homework problem. Okay. All right, so the first one we have is we want you to divide, before the divisions, we're going to ask you to divide x squared minus 5x minus 20 divided by x minus, I think I can also do, well, let's do minus 13. The homework is minus 12 there. Okay. So again, we got to do long division so that we compare to the example we just did. So if you let's compare. Let me write down the other example right here. 487 divided by 23. That was the one we did. So how did we set it up? The way, again, the process imitates long division of numbers exactly, even including the steps. So the first step, if you remember we did, was we put the first number, which is called a dividend, under the line. So you're going to do exactly the same thing. You set up a long division and you put the first dividend, x squared minus 5x minus 20 under the line. And 23, the divisor goes on the front of the line. So here, in our case, it's x minus 13. We're going to put it on the front. Okay. All right, so that's the setup. Now, okay, so recall there's 3 steps we did. So we try to figure out step 1. Simply put is, I'm just gonna take the first word of each step. So divide, multiply, and subtract, right? So I don't have much space here, so I'm just gonna write down divide, and then multiply, just keep, and then subtract. So if you keep, so kind of like give you a hint to remind yourself what you need to do. So if you remember, what we did was I try to figure out 23 goes into 48 how many times. So the same thing here, you're gonna figure out x minus 13 goes into how many times x minus 13 goes into x squared minus 5x. This is going to be much harder, right? Than trying to figure out 23 goes into 48 how many times. So if you remember what we did with the numbers, what we did is we ignored the second digits because technically it's just trying to figure out how many times 20 goes into 48. And when you try to figure out how many times 20 goes into 48, you are doing 40 divided by 20. But when you do 40 divided by 20, it's pretty much the same as 4 divided by 2. So actually we're doing 40 divided by 20, but 40 divided by 20 is the same as 4 divided by 2 after we cancel the common factor 10. So this is what we did. We take 4 divided by 2 to figure out the quotient. So in this case, take a look at this case. Correspondingly, how do I figure out the quotient to put up here? So we figured out 2. What should we do? What division should we do here? What divide by what?
How x divides into x squared.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Melissa. Well, we had 2 digits here, where correspondingly we have 2 terms instead of 2 digits, but kind of similar, right? So you are going to take, so like when we did 4 divided by 2, right? So you're going to take x squared divided by x. So ignore the second terms temporarily. So we take x squared divided by x, like Melissa said, and we know how to do that, right? We learned how to do division last Thursday. So we're going to subtract the exponents. We get 2 minus 1, which is 1x. Okay, so we get x to the first. And that x corresponds to that 2 there. So we're going to put the x on top of the line. So that should be an x. How many times? Like I said, some of the students, I don't know if anybody here, if you learned this before, or if anybody has, you can see, well, how many times x goes into x squared? Well, it's actually x times, because x times x gives you x squared, right? Okay, so I'm going to put an x there. So if you can see it, you may not need to, do the division, long division, okay? I'm not really long division, I'm sorry, just call division here. All right, so the first step is finished. I figured out how many times. What is the next step? Okay, what's the next step we should do following the process here?
You have to multiply x by x and x by 13.
Okay, multiply x by x minus 13. Yes, that's right. Okay, I was trying to, I heard a few students, two students trying to answer at the same time. Okay, so that is correct. So what we did here, go back to look the process we did here. After we figure out 2, we take 2, multiply with 23, right? So just like the real life example, if you figure out, you can give everybody two tens, and how many tens it's going to cost you, you have to do 23 times. So you're going to take your x, multiply by x minus 3. Oops. What is going on? Somebody. Okay. All right, I'm sorry. I don't. Okay, so I don't know what happened. I just lost the connection suddenly. All right, let's go back. Can you see the PowerPoint slide?
No.
Okay, what's going on? Okay, I'm having a lot of technical problems today. Okay, so let me try to rejoin again. I don't know why it's not showing. I'm seeing that it's sharing, but you can't see it. That's weird.
I don't know if this helps, but I have a friend on another Teams meeting and their connection just went out too. So I don't know if it's Teams or if it's like, I don't know if it's, yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm not sure something is wrong with this computer. Now I'm having trouble. I have to restart it again. Okay, I don't know. Okay.
I think all of us lost connection.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know if you heard me the first time, but my friend who is in another Teams class lost connection on their Teams class. So I think it could be like a team server problem, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, so I'm just gonna try to restart my computer again, see if it works. It's very strange. And one computer, well, I have two computers, so at one point I lost the connection on both of them. I was able to come back, but you cannot. I was trying to share the slides, but you guys can't see it. And when I try to rejoin again, it won't let me rejoin. So it might be, I don't know. Okay.
That's what happened to me too, and I kept doing it until it let me back in.
Okay. So I usually just try to every time that if I have a technical problem, I just restart my computer. So let's try it again, see if it works. Okay, great. Okay, good. Finally, it's working. Okay. So luckily, I don't have too much to cover today. I think well, I lost. Oh, it's still here. Good. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the process. Let's see. So we are trying to imitate the process we did for numbers. And so we already figured out a quotient. So the second step we're going to do is to do multiply. So we're going to multiply this x with, I think it was Melissa who answered, with x minus 3. Well, you could just do it in your head without writing them down. So you're going to just do x times x, which gives you x squared. And then x times negative 13, that gives you negative 13x. But if you have trouble doing that way, you can write it down on your scratch paper or write if there's a space and you can just write next to your problem. So you're going to do x times x, which gives us x squared, x times negative 13, that gives us negative 13x. So again, this is something we talked about last week. Multiply one term and two terms, distributing whatever to the term to the terms inside the parentheses. Okay, so this is something little similar to what we're doing here with the numbers. So we're doing 2 times 3, 2 times 2, right? It's like a distribution. You distribute 2 to 3, distribute 2 to 2. So 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 2, that's a 4, right? It's kind of similar. So you're just doing x times negative 13, x times x. But one thing that is different, which is the minus sign. Well, with numbers, you never get a negative. You won't get negative 6. It's always going to be positive. But with the variables, with the polynomials, you may have a negative here. So that's the place we got to be very careful. Okay, so the next step is the tricky part. A lot of, many students mess this up. So remember, the final step was supposed to do subtraction. So after you lining up, you do 8 minus 6 to 4 minus 4, that's 0. Or you can say they cancel out. But usually we don't even need to put a minus sign here because everybody knows we should do subtraction. 8 minus 6, nobody's going to do 8 plus 6 to get 14, right? Well, because we are familiar with the long division. But with the polynomials, because you have minus sign, that could cause some mistakes. So what I usually recommend that everybody, what you can do is, remember, put a minus sign here to remind yourself. So you're going to do subtraction here, subtraction here. X squared minus x squared, they cancel, you get 0, just like 4 minus 4 is 0. But when you do the next part, we are doing negative 5x. Let me write it down here so you can see. We're doing negative 5x minus negative 13x. That is something you will never have with the long division of numbers. You will never have like 8 minus negative 6 because you won't have negatives. It's always going to be a positive number minus a positive number. 8 minus 6 is 2. But right here, look, what numbers that we are subtracting? We're subtracting a negative number from a negative number. Because when we combine like terms, x doesn't change. We bring down x. But the variables, the numbers in front of them, it's not going to be a positive minus positive. It's negative 5 minus negative 13. So that goes back to what we learned previously before the first exam, how to subtract sign numbers. Okay, so do you remember how we subtract sign numbers? What do we do? How do we do negative 5 minus negative 13? Maybe Riley, are you there?
Well, you're going to distribute that. It's going to be negative 5x times 13x because you got to multiply that negative sign in to make that negative 13, x a positive now.
Okay, well, what you just said, Amanda, it's actually what we have a name for this. Does anybody remember? We call it keep, change, right?
Can change. Yeah,
Yes.
keep, change.
So let me get rid of x, just do deal with numbers. So it's like a -5 minus -13. Remember the rules we learned before was keep the first number, change it minus to plus, and then change the sign of the following number. Okay, so you're gonna end up with -5 plus 13, which gives us 8. So that should be an 8 there. Okay, so a common mistake was a lot of students who just did -5 minus 13. That was -18. Because they are thinking, I'm doing subtraction because it's -5 minus 13. It is subtraction I'm doing, but they didn't realize there's another, this minus actually comes from the number. We need another minus between these two negative numbers. So there's another minus in front of -13. And that minus together with this minus in 13, that can change it to a positive. So what I usually would do is I'm just gonna change it to both of them to plus. If you don't want to rewrite it, that's what we could do. Okay. So you do keep, change vertically instead of horizontally. So keep the top number, change the minus to plus, and change the minus to plus again. So we are actually adding -5 and a positive 13. That gives us 8. Okay, so that's a common mistake that I saw. Even in 1200, I still see students who are, making mistakes right here. Okay, so make sure you pay attention to that. All right, so we actually finished the first round of 3 steps. So we did all these 3 steps one time. And what we need to check is, do we have any more digits? Here are more terms. So as you can see that here we got to bring down that 7. So here we bring down that -20. Very similar to the process, right? Repeat these 3 steps again. So divide and multiply and subtract. So this time you will be working on 8x minus 20, just like here, you will focus on 27. You can try to figure out 23. How many times 23 goes into 27? So you do 2 divided by 2. So the same thing. So here, what do we divide to figure out the quotient? We try to figure out how many times x minus 13 goes into 8x minus 20. How many times? Well, if you can see it, you can just maybe write down the answer in the chat box. How many times x minus 13 goes into 8x minus 20? Or if you know what to do, you can let us know what we should do. Anybody? Maybe Paula, are you there? I haven't seen any answers yet. Okay, I do see one. Okay, you're confused, Paula? Okay, so go back to, okay, Melissa, you're right. So go back to look at the process we did. So we're trying to imitate the long division process. So we're trying to figure out how many times 23 goes into 27. What would you do? We would round 23 to 20, 27 to 20. So we would do 2 divided by 2. 20 divided by 20. How many times 20 goes into 20? I know everybody can see it's one time, right? But we want to try to figure out a standard way to solve this type of question. So what we do is we take 20 divided by 20, which is the same as doing 2 divided by 2, because that 10 can be, canceled out. So it's how do we figure out quotient? So we're going to do division to figure out quotient. What do we divide? You take that 2, divide it into that 2. So in this case, that 2, the first digit of the divisor, corresponds to the first term of the divisor. The first digit of 27 corresponds to the first term of 8x minus 20. So it's like you're trying to divide x into 8x. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's divide 8x by x. And x cancels the x out. That gives us 8. Okay, can everybody see that now? Okay, so we figure out the quotient is 8, and we put it up here. By the way, make sure you put a plus sign there. With the numbers, we didn't have to. You just put 21, right? But with the polynomials, you do have to put a plus sign, because what we have is not really you can't call 8x a number, right? So we have to put a plus sign. 21, which just means 20 plus 1. Technically, it's 20 plus 1, because this 2 means 2/10. But with the variables, we don't really have a way just to put them together. So we must put a plus sign there. So after we figure out 8, what is the next step we should do? Recall the process here. So after we figure out the quotient is 1, what would we do next? We would take that 1.
We gotta multiply. Yeah.
Right, we're gonna multiply. Okay. We already brought down negative 20, Paula. We already brought that down. So, and we already figured out x plus 13. Wait, minus, sorry. Let me erase that. Yes, I understand, Paula, you're confused. This is a very long process. So that's why I was like, today's class, I will just be talking about this type of question. So we have plenty of time to talk about this. Okay, I know some of you, if you are very familiar with long division, like I think Melissa and maybe some of the other students get this immediately. But if you're not very familiar with long division, you might have a little bit of trouble, doing this type of question. Okay, again, I will give you more examples after this one. So when we get here, so maybe I can put, next time I can put the problem side by side so you can compare. And so 27, when we get to 27, we take 1 times 23, we write the answer right below and subtract them. So the same way, we're going to take 8 corresponding to that 1 there, and then multiply 8 with x minus 13. So the next step we're going to do is multiplication. We're going to take 8 multiplied by x minus 13. Okay, so that's going to give us 8x minus 104. So I'm going to line up my answer, 8x minus 104 there. And final step is subtraction. So we're going to do subtraction, put a minus here and a minus there. And when we do subtraction, remember we are going to do, okay, so these two will cancel each other. 8x minus 8x, they cancel each other. But when we have a minus here, we again keep change. So when we do negative 20 minus negative 104, we got to do keep change. So it's like 104 minus 20. So that gives us 84 as a remainder. Okay. So I think next time I'm going to put these two side by side so you can compare the steps. Okay, so I'm going to repeat this question one more time. So if you still are confused at any point, so let's, whoops. Okay, so let's write this down here. Now, maybe I will write down the numbers one first. So 400, this time I'm going to change the 8 to 9. 497 divided by 23, side by side with the example we just did, x squared minus 5x minus 20 divided by x minus 13. Okay, so let's look at this question again. Okay, so if you're still confused, So you again, you have to be familiar with the long division process. And so when you every time when you do long division for polynomials, just refer back to what you did with numbers. So for example, when I try to figure out how many times 23 goes into 49, when I get a question, the first thing I want to do is, okay, how many times 23 goes into 49? Similarly, x minus 13. See, x corresponds to 2. Negative 13 corresponds to that 3. 2 digits, 2 terms, right? They correspond to each other. And similarly here, 49, 4 corresponds to x squared. 9 corresponds to negative 5x. 2 digits, number, 2 terms, polynomial. Okay, so they kind of, all right, so correspond to each other. So when you try to figure out how many times 23 goes into 49, it's like trying to figure out how many times x minus 13 goes into x squared minus 5x. So with numbers, you might be able to figure out, might be able to see how many times, 2 times here. But with variables, it's kind of hard. I know some of you might be able to see, oh, it's x times, okay? If you can see it, you don't have to do division. But for those students who cannot see how many times x minus 13 goes into x squared minus 5x, the process is the same as we're doing with trying to figure out how many times 23 goes into 49. So what you would do is you would run the numbers as 20 goes, how many times 20 goes into 40? And how many times does 20 go into 40? What would you do? You would take 40 and divide by 20, which is the same as doing 4 divided by 2. So that's why I gave you this tip. That's sort of something you got to remember. Maybe you didn't do this before with long division because you were familiar with the numbers. You were able to just tell the quotient is 2 times. But with variables, if you have trouble telling how many times, you're going to have to do division. And what division do we do? So I'm going to just get rid of 7. It's like when you ignore the second digits, 3 and 9, it's like 2 divided into 4, right? So it's pretty much like 2 divided into 4. What's the answer? 2 divided into 4. You're taking 4 divided by 2, so that gives you 2 up there. So correspondingly, so look, let me highlight the ones we divided. You're dividing 2 into 4. Correspondingly, you're dividing, look, remember we said a 2 corresponds to x, right? Dividing x into x squared. So this 2 corresponds to x. This 4 corresponds to x squared. When you take 2 divided into 4, it's like taking x divided into x squared. Okay, so what we have is when we divide 4 divided by 2, that gives us that 2 up there. Okay, so correspondingly, so this is the process we did. We take 4 divided by 2, right? Okay, well, maybe I shouldn't use this. So we take 4 divided by 2. Here, I'm going to write down the division right here. So we're dividing x squared by x. So we get x. That's how we figure out the x on the top there. Okay. Does everyone understand the first step? So we're only doing the first step, trying to figure out how many times. Okay. But after you figure out this 2, what would you do next? Paula, can you tell us? Looking at the numbers, after we figured out 23 goes into 49 2 times, what would you do next? Paula, are you there? Can you talk? Can you hear me? Okay, well, looks like she is gone. Okay. Okay, well, anybody else? Maybe
You multiply them.
you multiply them, right? Righty. Okay, thanks. So you're gonna multiply the 2 and the 23. So this is what we do in the next step. So you do 2 times 23. That gives us 46. So similarly, remember that 2 quotient up there corresponds to our x up here. So we're gonna take our x, multiply with x minus 13, just like we're doing 2 times 23. So multiply these and multiply these. Okay, so we're going to write down x times x minus 13. Again, if you can see it, you don't have to write it down. You can just do it in your mind. Okay, so the 46 we got, we would align it up with the 49, the 2 digits. And similarly, we got x squared minus 13x. We're also lining up. Okay, so we're lining up. And after that, the final step, we do subtraction. So we're going to do minus. Again, with numbers, usually we don't put a minus sign there, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to put a minus sign there. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the minus sign here. So we're doing subtraction here, subtraction there. So we're doing 9 minus 6, which is 3, 4 minus 4, which gives us 0. Okay. So the same thing here with, we are going to do subtraction right there. Get rid of these. I'm going to put a minus sign here, minus sign there. So this is the tricky part. X squared minus x squared, I think everybody can see they cancel each other. The tricky part is right here. So when we do -5 minus, don't forget there's another minus sign there. So -5 minus -13. Usually I would recommend that you should go ahead and change that to a plus. So I would do -5 plus 13 because keep, change, change. Whenever we do subtraction, we can do keep, change, change. Okay, so now we end up with -5 plus 13. That gives us 8x. Okay, so that would be the first round of these 3 steps. So next, we just bring down that negative. Well, similarly, we will bring down the 7 and repeat the process again. So we will do the same thing and bring down that -20 and repeat the process again. So when we repeat the process, you're going to be looking at how many times 23 goes into 37, just like how many times x minus 13 goes into 8x minus 20. So 8x corresponds to that 3 there. -20 corresponds to the 7 there. Okay, so to figure out the quotient, we still have to do division. So we take, like 3 divided by 2. Well, actually, 2 doesn't go into 3, right? So we, with numbers, when you do, you actually have to run it to 1.5, but we don't use 1.5. We can't use decimal, so we put a 1 there. And the same thing here, we are going to take 8x, which corresponds to 3 divided by 2. So we're going to take 8x divided by that x there. Okay, so we end up with 8, and we put that plus 8 up there, just like we put a 1 here and multiply 1 with 23. Okay, so we're going to multiply 8 with the x minus 13. So we end up with 8x minus 104. And we have 23 up here. So we subtract, and we subtract right there. Okay, I'm going to put a minus here, minus there. So 8x minus 8x, they cancel. -20 minus 104. We again do keep, change, change. So we end up with 84. Okay, so we can, if you want, you can leave the, what you need, you can just mark the answer. Let's say this is the quotient. This is the quotient, and whoops, Q, quotient. This is the remainder. The other way to write the answer, so the question they give you is x squared minus 5x minus 20 divided by x minus 13. You also could write it as x plus 8 plus 84 over x minus 13. Okay. Well, why? Because when you have $497 divided by 23 people, you are going to have $21 plus a remainder, $14 into 23. Okay. All right. So, okay. Questions? I know Paula, you missed. I don't know where you came back, but just kind of quickly going over this for you. So we are after you figure out the quotient, you're supposed to Riley answer the question for you. So you're gonna multiply 2 and 23. So take 2. Let me use a highlighter maybe. So you're gonna multiply your. Oops, you multiply 2, the quotient 2 with 23. That gives us 46 to line up with 49. So correspondingly, we take our quotient x multiply with x minus 13 because x corresponds to 2 here. X minus 13 corresponds to 23 there. So if you multiply 2 and 23, correspondingly, you multiply x with x minus 13. And the answer we got 46 to line up with 49. So here, the answer we got when you multiply x and x minus 13, we got x squared minus 13x. That's something we got to do with exponent laws and what we did last week. So we line up x squared plus 13 with x squared minus 5x, just like we line up 46 with 49. And after that, we do subtraction. Okay, so as I said, when you do subtraction, be very careful because you have to use keep change there. Okay, and after that, you will bring down that 7. Correspondingly, we have negative 20. So that 7 corresponds to negative 20. So we bring down negative 20 and repeat the whole process again. Okay, how do we repeat the process again? We are trying to figure out how many times x minus 13 would go into 8x minus 20. So how many times this go into that? Again, we're going to do division. So we'll take 8x divided by x because it's like x, how many times x goes into 8x, right? So we take 8x divided by x. So it's like if you ignore the second terms, you just have x there. Ignore the second term, negative 20, you just have 8x. So it's like divide 8x into 8x. So here's what we did. We use division we learned last Thursday. We cross out x, we end up with 8. And that 8 goes up in the quotient. And again, multiply. So we take 8, multiply with x minus 13. We end up with 8x minus 104 and line up with 8x minus 20 and do subtraction again. Okay, again, when you do subtraction, it's keep change. So we have this final answer, 84, remainder as 84. Okay, it is possible you may have a remainder 0. I think maybe in the first homework, in the question in the homework, maybe you possibly could have a remainder 0. Okay, so the main steps we have: division, multiplication, and then subtraction. So that's why we need to remember these 3 steps. And you got to repeat these 3 steps over and over. Okay, so divide, multiply, and subtract. So next I'm gonna, well, maybe, I don't know, if I give you a practice question, will you be able to do it? Or do you want to see another example? If you still...
Could you do another example?
Yes, okay. So this time I'm gonna do a longer one, okay? So the one I did with 3 terms, right? So if you look, I have, see, corresponding to the numbers, I have 4, 9, 7, 3 digits. Well, with polynomial, I have 1, 2, 3 terms. But you may have, when we do division, you could have 4 digits a number. So probably you could have, okay, so you could do 4,900. I wanted to maybe go back to the example we had before, 487. Okay, so you could have 487 7, maybe 6. So you may have divided 4,876 by 23. And we know the process is going to be exactly the same. You just have to do one more step, right? So if you figure out 23 goes into 48 2 times, that gives you 46. And you subtract, it gives you 27. 23 goes into 27 one time. But after that, because I added one more digit. So we got to bring down that 6 and do the process again. And then it's exactly 2 times. So maybe you will get a remainder 0. But if I change this to another 7, you will get a remainder 1. Okay, so if you have more digits, just keep bringing it down, repeat it, bring it down, repeat those 3 steps. So I'm going to do another one here. If I have like 1, 2, 3 digits, right? So I'm going to make 3 terms. So I may have 23 x to the third plus oh yeah, okay, 25 x squared minus 8x minus 9 divided by well, actually, I'm going to change well, I will give you more examples. So let me just make it x plus 2. Okay. So now we have four terms corresponding to 4 digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So first of all, we're still going to try to do the same thing. So every time, just refer back. If you have trouble, hopefully at this point, you are able to see without referring back to that example. Does everybody know what's the first step we should do? Does everybody? And is there still confusion? Anybody say I don't know what to do?
I don't know.
Who's that? Tori?
Yeah. This
Okay.
is the one that gets me because I don't know. I don't know if it's just because the X. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Well,
so
you're going to you're going to divide it all by 2 individually
divide by
and
2
multiply
individual.
the x.
I'm not sure if I understand you.
When you confuse me when you write it like that on the right hand side.
On the right hand side.
The x plus 2 with the long division, I work it out better when it's the line under, when the x plus the 2 is underneath.
You mean
so I would divide, yeah, when you write it like that, I can work it out.
Actually, we cannot do it this way because there are 2 terms.
Right, so you would divide each number by the 2 and then subtract your exponents, the x. So it would be 2 into 23, 2 into 25, 2 into 8, and 2 into 9. And then it would be x so, oh my God, I would just have to write it out and then send it to you. Because 2 into 23, you're going to get a decimal. It's not going to work out to be even. And 2 into 25 is going to be 12.5. 2 into 8 is going to be 4. And then you're going to have an odd number for the 9. And then your x's is going to be x cubed, x, and then that x is going to cancel out.
I'm not sure if I can follow you. What would be your final answer? I know there is a different way to do this question, but I don't think you're going to have decimal. So for this question, you won't get decimal. You will always have, for this case, yeah, you won't have decimal. There is a different way you can do it. It's called a synthetic division, which you ignore all the variables, but I don't think there's any other way besides these 2 ways. So you won't be able to just say divide 2 into 23 to get 12.5. We can't do that. Why not? Because there's x plus here. So just like let me give you a very simple example. So if I give you this question, 3 plus 2, let me change that x to a 3. 23 plus just numbers. So how would you do this question? 23 plus 25 divided by 3 plus 2. Amanda, what
well,
would
that
you
changes it. I changed it all completely, then you would add them both together.
Right.
So 3
That's
plus,
right. Exactly. So you actually have to add the numbers before you do division. So you
so then
can
it would be 2x.
you cannot actually you won't be able to say, okay, I'm just going to divide 2 into 23. You can't do that because there's a 3 plus there. So you can't just separate then say I'm just going to divide 23 by 2 and 25 by 2 and then divide
So
it.
in,
I think what you're trying to do is you're dividing 23 by 2 and then divide x third by x. Is that what you're trying to do?
yes, that's what I thought you
No, you
did.
can't do that. You can't do that. That won't
So then
be
it's
fine.
this is
So that question, the way that was for the previous exam case. So I want you guys to let's see how okay. So I want you guys to compare these two questions here. So let me give you a new page. So don't confuse those questions. So if I give you 23x squared divided by let's say 2x, you will be able to notice that, look, it's multiplication here. You will be able to split them into two questions and to do it this way, okay? But if I change this multiplication to plus, I change it to from 2 times x to 2 plus x, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to say, I'm going to do 23 divided by 2 plus x cubed divided by x. No, it's not correct. Unfortunately, we can't do that. Again, what's the reason? Because when we add fractions, we're not going to be able to just add the bottom and bottom. We cannot say 2 plus x. So because think about the fractions. If I gave you 2 over 5 plus 3 over 6, can we get the answer as 5 over 11? I know some of the students still did this on the first exam, but we know it's wrong, okay? Because we cannot add straight across. You cannot just say 5 plus 6 is 11, 2 plus 3 is 5. It doesn't work this way, unfortunately. So that's why you cannot just say, let's split into 2. The only time you will be able to do that is when you have all multiplications. So when you have all multiplications, well, because what is the rule for multiplying fractions? Straight across, right? You can do top times top, bottom times bottom. So that's why you could be able to, you could go back to split them into two questions. But we don't have the same rule for addition, unfortunately. We cannot just say add straight across. So yes, we can multiply straight across. Multiply straight across, okay? But we can't add straight across. That's something, like I said, on the first exam, I still saw quite a few students who were just trying to add straight across. Okay, it's not going to be correct. And I mean, think about it. If I give you a quarter plus 2/4, are you going to get? You're just going to get 3/4, right? You're not going to get 3 over 16, 8, because you're trying to add a straight cross. It doesn't work that way, okay? So you have to have the same denominator to add. So again, go back to that question we just talked about. So when you have a question like this, two terms, you cannot just say, I'm going to divide number by number, variable by variable. It doesn't work this way anymore, unfortunately. Okay, we wish it could be as simple as that, like that. Unfortunately, just it doesn't work like that. So one of the ways we would do is long division. Okay, later after we talk about factoring, there's possibly some of the problems can be solved by factoring, but like this one, we actually we cannot do it by factoring. Okay, so this process has a simplified version, which I usually don't talk about unless you learn it before. So if you say you heard of something called a synthetic division, if you learned that before, you can use that way. The process is pretty much the same as what we're doing. It's just like you don't have to write all the variables, okay? But synthetic division has, has a little problem with the divisor. So that's why I usually don't talk about that unless you have learned it, okay? Or if anybody is interested in learning synthetic division, I don't know. I don't think we have time today either. You may come to office hours. Maybe I can show you synthetic division, and you maybe if you say, well, this process is too complicated, and you want to learn synthetic division, I can show you that. Okay. Well, anyway, so the correct process is to imitate long division. Imitate this process, long division. Okay. Right. Okay. So how do we imitate this long division? So the reason why do I set up a long division, because we couldn't divide just like number by number, variable by variable like we did it previously, because this is a plus, not a times. And so that's why we have to do this way. Okay. Does it make sense, Amanda, why we have to do this way? Why couldn't just do the same way like before?
It'll have to make sense.
Okay. All right. So again, I mean, there are lots of explanations. Unfortunately, just like when we have, I mean, it's the same reason. If you have 3 plus 2 in the denominator, you will not be able to, I don't know if I can make a very quick example to explain that. Yeah, maybe I can do this. Okay, so we know if you have 10x plus 5 divided by 3 plus 2, we could add the numbers 3 plus 2 to get a 5. And then see 3 plus 2 originally got two numbers, two terms, right? I was able to combine them to get a single 5. Okay, great. Now that you can separate them to divide this way. That does work when you are able to combine 3 and 2. So that just gives you 2x plus 1. But unfortunately, x plus 2, can we combine them? We can't, right? They are not like terms. You're not going to be able to combine them. So that's the problem with x plus 2 there. And you won't be able to say, well, I'm just going to divide 2 into that 10 there, and to get a 5x. And well, we know it's not a 5x, it's 2x. So what happened to that 3 there? Well, what should we divide that 3 into? So unfortunately, when you have plus, it gets much more complicated than just dividing them separately. So that's why last week I did not give you this case. All the problems we did, you could just split them, divide them like separately, because I never gave you plus. It's times. It's x times 2. So you were able to do that way. So this is a completely different type, which cannot be done the same way we did before. Okay, so let me get rid of that. All right, so first of all, we understand that we cannot divide number by number, variable by variable like we did before, because it's x plus 2. It's a plus sign, not a times. Secondly, how do we do this question? Okay, if we cannot do it like the way before, separate the variables and numbers, what do? We do what we call long division. Okay. All right, so the long division imitates the long division of numbers. Okay, so when we do long division, so think about, but for those of you, if you say, I still don't know what to do, I recommend that you memorize these 3 steps. So which 3 steps right here? Divide, multiply, and subtract. At least you need to remember these 3 words. First divide, and then multiply, and then subtract. Okay. And again, if you are familiar with long division of numbers, you shouldn't know these are the 3 steps we do. So how do we figure out? So when we do long division, we try to figure out how many times 23 goes into, how many times 23 goes into 48. You got to do long division there. I'm sorry, you got to do division there. And after you figure out the quotient, you're going to multiply 2 and 23. That's multiplication. And then you do 48 minus 46. That's subtraction. So that's why we have the same 3 steps: divide, multiply, and subtract. Okay. So when you do divide, what divide by what? We don't really have to divide 48 by 23. You could just divide 4 by 2 to figure out the quotient. Is that right? Does that make sense? Tori, I know you had a bit trouble to get started. So do you have trouble with the left side example of dividing? No?
I
So
don't have trouble with that. It's like when we do the on the right side, that's when I get all confused.
Okay, so let me ask you, just stay on, keep your mic on. So let me ask you, what's the first step you did on here with the numbers?
You divide 2 by 4.
Divide 2 into 4,
Yeah.
4. Okay, or in the other words, you say 4 divide by 2.
Yeah.
So yes, that's right. So you're gonna look, this 2 corresponds to our x here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this 4 corresponds to our 23x third there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, because 2 terms corresponds 2 terms, so 2 digits, 2 digits. So the first digit 2 corresponds to first term x. First digit 4 corresponds to the first term 23 x to the third. Okay, so if you're gonna do 4 divided by 2 here, what would you divide here then?
You would divide x plus 2 and 23x squared.
We only take, remember, we only divided 2 into 4. Remember, we didn't take the second digit, right?
Yeah.
So here we're gonna divide
X by 2.
into, wait, we don't need a plus 2 because just like you don't need 3 there, right?
Yeah.
So you just do 2 divided into 4. So in this case, it will be what?
The x,
Mm-hmm.
x
Yeah.
and 2.
X into this 4. 4 corresponds to what? Which one corresponds to 4? 23?
Yeah.
X third. Let me maybe line up this way. You can see better. Okay, so let's see. Get rid of that. Get rid of this. Okay, so it looks like I think you're not seeing the lining up correctly. So maybe that's what. Let me just put the question number here. So 4, 8, 7, 6, 23. Okay, so let's lining up. So x corresponds to 2, plus 2 corresponds to 3. So what corresponds to 4? It's not just 23, it's 23x to the third.
Okay.
Because, yeah, these two together considered as a term. So that corresponds to 4.
Okay.
And 25x squared corresponds to 8, our second digit. The third term corresponds to our third digit, 7, and the -9 corresponds to our last digit, 6. Okay,
Yeah.
so when you do division, 2 into 4, 2, how many times 2 goes into 4? Correspondingly, it will be what?
2.
2. Yeah, how many times what goes into what? So you're trying to figure out when you're dealing with numbers, you will be trying to figure out how many times 2 goes into 4, right? Correspondingly, for the variables, how many times what goes into what?
How many times x goes into 23? X to the third.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so that's what you would do. Do you see
Okay.
that? Exactly the same process. So that's the
Okay.
first step. That's how you get started.
Okay.
So
That's how I'm just getting started, and I would be fine if I don't know.
Okay, all right. Hopefully you will be fine after that. So let me ask you, do you know, I know everybody can do 2 divided into 4, right? So it's just like 4, if you put in the fraction of 4, it's 4 divided by 2, we get 2.
Yeah.
So how many times x, let me write down correspondingly, x goes into x to the third. When you write down vertically, it's 23x third divided by x. Can you divide them? And Tori, can you divide those?
Would it be 23x to the 2?
Yes.
Second?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's what we talked about last Thursday. Exactly. Okay. So that's the same process.
Okay.
All right. And then take a look at where we put that 2 we got in the numbers, right up to line up with 48, right? So you put that 2 right here, okay? So similarly, you're going to put 23x squared. If I can maybe erase all these lines so I can put then. So you are going to put that, so just like after we figure out 2, you're going to put 2 up here. This 2 goes up there. So 23x squared would go up right here, exactly the same place.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask you, after you put the quotient up there, what would you do next? With the numbers, Just
you do the same thing. You should do the same thing again.
Yes. Can you tell me? Just say it. Like what would you do here? I know it's repeat the same thing there, but what would you do after you put 2 up there?
Okay, then you divide 2 by 23.
2 by 23. Wait. Divide?
Or multiply.
Multiply.
Sorry.
Yes, that's right. You multiply 2 and 23, right? So
Yeah.
correspondingly, what would you multiply here for the variables?
They multiply 23
Mm-hmm.
x squared to the, multiply x plus 2.
Yes, that's right. So when you do 2 times 23, correspondingly, this 2 corresponds to that 23x squared, right? So just put 23x squared. And that 23, 2 digits correspond to, I got rid of the lines, but 23 corresponds to that x plus 2. So that's what we will multiply. Okay. I mean, 22 times 23, it's easy to do. It's 46. Everybody can see that. But I don't know if, can you do this multiplication here? 23x squared, we got variables now. So can you do 23x squared times x plus 2?
It would be 23x third.
Yeah.
And then plus 46.
There's also a variable here.
3 to the third. Sorry.
Wait, third? Hold on. Let me line it up. Okay, so you can see better.
To the second. Sorry.
Yes, to the second. Yes. Okay. So that's what you're going to distribute through. So 23 times 2, 46. X squared will just stay as x squared. Okay. So remember when we got 46, we line it up with 48, right? So we're going to do the same thing. Well, we got much more complicated something than 46, right? So you're going to take this and line up with what you have here, 23x third plus. Remember, 4 corresponds to that, and 8 corresponds to this. So I'm going to line up the second with the second, first with first. Okay, do you understand this process?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to, all right. So after we did all that, and what's the next step for the numbers? I multiplied, I line up the numbers. What's the next step? Third step.
Subtract.
Yes, that's right. Subtract, right? So you do minus here. So we're going to do the same thing here. You're going to do subtract. Okay. All right. So you're doing 8 minus 6. It's 2. 4 minus 4 is 0. Well, I have to get rid of this so I can write that question. So I'm going to get rid of this because the rest of the steps are going to be the same. Just repeat. So I'm going to get rid of that. So can you see what the answer is with the variables when we subtract? So when you're subtracting 23 minus 23, of course, they cancel. 25 minus 46. What would that be? Numbers are kind of big. So it's minus. Okay, so 25 minus 46.
It would be negative 21.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Okay, that's exactly. But the variables, we still have to carry that, and negative 21x squared. Okay, so if you looks like you got all the 3 steps, the rest of it, just repeat these 3 steps. So if you can do the, these 3 steps, divide, multiply, subtract, and the rest of it, you should be the same. Do the same way. So next one, bring down negative 8x, because you can only bring down one digit each time. So like you bring down that 7, right? So you bring down negative 8x.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you the final question. So how would you figure out the quotient up here? Do you remember what we did? Remember we're doing division. Do you remember how we figured out the 23x squared? How we got that?
Oh yeah, we multiply. Multiply.
Multiply?
Or,
We divide 2
Yeah.
into 4, right? So in this case, we divide what into what?
sorry. You divide x plus 2
Into, we don't really need a plus 2. We just need the first digit, first term, remember? Okay. So we divide x into what?
we divide x into 23 to the third.
Yes, that's why we did it, to get that, right? So but now this is not the one we are working on. This is the one we're working on now. So we're gonna
Okay, so
divide.
then you divide x
Mm-hmm.
into negative 21x.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Okay. So that's the first step. Okay. Exactly. Okay. So if you remember, we're doing division. So but looks like you always want to say x plus 2. Yes, we actually we do want to know how many times x plus 2 goes in there. But the trick is you don't have to, when you try to figure out how many times, you don't have to worry about that digit. Just the same here. When you try to figure out how many times 23 goes into 49, you don't need to worry about that second digits. It's just like how many times 20 goes into 40. Okay. Well, when you do how many times 20 goes into 40, it's the same as how many times 2 goes into 4. So that's why we ignore the second terms. Just look at the first, which makes things much easier. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. Negative 21x squared divided by x.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to give us negative 21x, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to put it up there, negative 21x. Okay, and what's after that?
Then you multiply.
Yes. Okay. So it's always these 3 steps: divide and multiply and
Subtract.
Yes. So I did a division. I divided this by that. Now multiply. I don't know if you can do it just by looking at them without writing them down. So negative 21x times x, which is negative 21x squared.
Yeah.
And then negative 21x times positive 2, that's negative 42x. Okay. All right. And then we do keep, change, change. Okay, so what do we get? Keep, change, change it up there.
You would keep.
Okay.
You
So
would
keep, change,
keep negative
8.
1. Okay.
Change, change. So that's going to be 42 minus 8.
Yeah.
Which is 34x. Okay.
Yeah.
And these two will cancel because anything minus itself, they're going to cancel. Okay, so usually the first terms, they always cancel out. Okay, so the second time is finished. Now one more time, because we have a negative 9 we got to do. So just like you bring down the 6, do it one more time. And okay. All right, so how do we figure out the quotient here again, Tori?
You will Divide.
Yes.
Divide x by -9.
No, not -9. First digit. First term.
Sorry,
Yeah,
34.
first. Okay, just remember it's first into first. If you maybe that will help you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna divide x into 34x. So what's 34x divided by x? X cancels x out, so you got 34. Okay,
Yeah.
so just put 34 up there and then multiply. Okay, so 34 times x, it's 34x. 34 times positive 2, that's positive 68. Final step, subtraction.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to put a minus here, minus there. 34x minus 34x cancel out. And -9 minus 68. We can still do keep, change, and change.
-71.
77.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that would be the final answer. So that would be your remainder. That would be your quotient. So it's a long process, tedious process.
Yeah.
But if you understand the first round of divide, multiply, subtract, and you should be able to do the rest of it. Okay. I think you probably just need more practice. So these examples, you can try to redo it yourself, see if you can, get the correct answer. So it looks like, Tori, that it looks like you're okay with the multiply and the subtract. It's just the first step, divide.
Yeah.
So if you look, this symbol, what does it mean? It means division, right? Divide. But technically, yes, we're supposed to divide x plus 2 into x 23x third plus 25x squared. But this is much harder to do. So that's why usually we ignore plus 2, ignore 25x squared. We just divide x into 23x cubed. So you ignore the second terms. Okay. So similarly, the same way here, just like we ignore 3, ignore 8. 2 goes into 4 how many times? 2 times. So because it's going to be the same how many times. Okay. All right, questions? Okay, so we are going to, looks like we have 6 minutes left. I was able to just give you 2 examples. So if you need more examples, I can give you more examples Thursday. Okay. And I'll also, again, this video is available online, so you can watch the video again to redo the process. You can even pause, like when you watch the video, pause and just follow the step by step. Okay. So I'm going to give you maybe just 2 terms instead of 3 terms, see if you can do this. Okay, so let's try 3x squared divide by, subtract 5x, subtract 7 divided by x minus, I guess we can do 3. Okay, so that would just be the bonus. Oops, bonus for number 15. Okay, so just 1 question, 2 points. And if anybody still have trouble doing this one, and you can stay in the meeting and I can help you, just like how I helped Tori out. Otherwise, you can type present for today's class and submit your bonus to Blackboard. Okay.
I just have a random question I want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Will we get to where we factor polynomials?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Okay, because I keep thinking about it and I can't remember how to do it, but I figured we would get there. I just wanted to know, so just
Okay.
checking.
Yeah, very soon, very soon. Actually,
Okay.
I think it's next week. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. It's driving me crazy that I can't remember how to do it. So,
Okay.
all right.